You mamdingos and goons should be silenced at this point. You don't have a leg to stand on anymore, and I'll tell you what the reasons are. We can take two men that are both black and they're famous and they're financially successful for very opposite reasons and opposite images and opposite personas. On one hand, there's Andre Young, Dr. Dre. And how long has he been married to his wife? And she's requesting spousal support, last I heard, about to take half of 821 million. I don't think she's written their rhyme, business proposal, business plan, or anything else. And here she is about to take half of 821 million because she married, not even because she slept with, but because she married Andre Young. Now, the last I heard, the marriage was 28 years ago, if that's correct. I can't remember, but if it was 28 years ago, then that means that she was married to him 1991 and 92. So all this time, Dre's been rapping about effing these hoes. He's been married. I don't remember when it was that Snoop got married, but I heard that it was, I think I remember it was 1992, and then he remarried her in 96. And if I'm wrong, please correct me about the dates. I accept correction. But if this is correct, because see, remember, Snoop, we saw and heard from Snoop a little bit after 92. But in any case, the major part of time that they've been talking about effing these hoes and living this gangster lifestyle, which we in the community love to call alpha, or now consider alpha, they've been married. And now he's about to lose 410 million because he married her. Then there's the gamer, Wady or YD, and O'Shea Duke Jackson covered the fact that his wife of 3 years was not only cheating, but cheating with underage brads. And probably using his money to do it. And O'Shea was saying, look, you can't just be big and corny and only have money. And I want to say, Brother Jackson, in this case, I'm going to have to disagree for this reason. And that is that if you do work on everything else and you got money, it still becomes an issue. You still can't do anything. So you can add this to the list. We've already covered what's happened to other men that were so-called alphas and who were physically in better shape than Dr. Dre, although maybe about the same financially or in less financial shape than he was. But they were still doing quite well, and look what happened. At the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that you cannot be, as I've said before, so-called alpha enough. You can be man enough to where your conscience will not bother you. But you cannot be alpha enough. You cannot be man enough in her eyes to where she's going to stay with you when she has a financial incentive to leave. I guess it comes down to the fact that that dollar and the white man's government that prints it and makes the laws are always going to be more alpha in their eyes. So if you were one of these talking about game, you need to fuck the shuck up, because let's not assume that Dre really needed a whole lot of game. You see, the thing is, if you got so-called swag and street cred, that's your game. And if you don't have it, your game doesn't matter in our community. If you don't have what they want, then your game doesn't matter, your mouthpiece. In other words, what you say does not matter. It's always been this way. We've just been so stupid when it comes to game. I'm going to tell you, I mean, women can be game goofy, don't get it twisted. But one thing about which women are not game goofy is the need for game. They have us convinced that we need game, and they don't, because they've got vaginas. Now, there's no more clever a game than that. As a group with no technology, because this has been going on since before electronics, let alone before long distance communication within a short time, they have not needed any of the modern day conveniences that rely on electronics and radio waves in order to all massively, collectively decide that they don't need game and we do, just for an opportunity to give them something they already want anyway. And we don't question it. Their game has depended on whatever cooperative instincts they've had and their ability to convince us to not question things by making it appear that thinking is unsexy. And now that's not something that only happens in our community. That's just something that's exaggerated in our community. But women have made it to where men who think and understand certain things fear, for good reason, that they're going to be considered to be sexually unattractive. And that's true. That is very true. Women don't like quiet men necessarily for the reasons that we might think. They like quiet men because quiet men don't share information. That's why they like them. They don't really like them either. They just feel better with them than they do with men that actually share information and communicate with other men. That's, now I understand, that's what it really comes down to. That man that not necessarily talks too much for everybody, but that man that is simply intelligent and shares information with other men is the one that even if they do like, they won't be with, because he will examine them, analyze them, and he will tell other men what he's realized. Men that are not that talkative, men who are quiet, appeal to these women because he'll fuck the shuck up about what he knows about them. That's why. And they've got us convinced to not think about them in terms of what we need to know, like just strategizing. They've got us convinced to not think about them, let alone tell anyone else about them. And that we need to impress them, to encourage them and convince them to do what they already want to do, which is to bend over someone's couch or bend over on someone's bed and take a ding-a-ling, take a stiffy until they bust. Shout out to Mr. Clinkscales. In other words, they got libidos too. And they walk around and they prioritize materialism over their own libidos, even though their material wants are almost impossible to satisfy. Matter of fact, they are. But their libidos can be satisfied. And there's not, when you think about it, there's not even that selfish a gain for them to do such in the long run. So in other words, they're actually willing to harm themselves in the long run just to make sure that you don't have it too easy. That's it. Nothing else. And I'm going to tell you this. Some of you in the audience have mocked Islam before because of the concept of 72 virgin models of paradise. And I used to think, well, I mean, that's great, but does it have to be 72? Who can deal with that many? You know what? I understand. The more I learn about them and this so-called game, the real game, the one we men never master, I understand why God would do this and does not promise the same thing to women. I get it. They get to have theirs right here on earth, and they get choices and they get to choose. They just simply have to quell their materialism and be honest with themselves about their libido while controlling their materialism to be able to pick what's good for them in the long run. And nobody blames them when the evidence and the facts are clear that it's the guy that screwed up and ran her off. But when it comes down to it, we men are the ones that don't really have the options. And one of the reasons we don't is because we simply don't think. We don't like to think, strategize, and make them earn the options that they've had. Now, we think that we can't do it because we have libidos and we've got to get it out of the, we got to drain these testes. See, that's the thing. They got needs too. And yet and still, they do whatever they got to do to train themselves and to train each other to be so conceited that they're difficult when they don't even have anything to offer in exchange compared to what they want. They've got the libidos that we have, and yet and still they will install conceit and self-worth while they are suffering from insecurities. They still install that in their minds just so that you've got a difficult time to go through to get them draws, so that you can sit up and start bragging about how alpha you are because of how many buns you get. And by giving them free reign in the West, we now have a situation in which you can compare him to my toilet right now. See, my toilet can flush, but the flushing lever is somehow weakened. So what I have to do is I have to take the top off of the back and press the inside of the lever. The one that connects to the outside lever you can see, I have to take the top off the back and press down on the buttons on the inside directly, bypassing the outside that does not apply enough pressure. Even when I apply enough pressure, something's wrong with it. I have to do that. Then, of course, it flushes strongly and everything's crystal clean afterwards. Now, the fact I got to do this, and it's going to get fixed shortly, but the fact that I've got to do this does not mean that it's normal. Doesn't mean I should have to. It's good that I can figure these things out, but that doesn't mean that I should sit up and just be content with it simply because. I still have to tell other people, when you are done, leave the top down over the seat, remove the top of the back, and then press that lever directly underneath the top on the inside. And then it will flush. I have to tell them that it is flawed because in reality it is. If you can't hit that button and it just flushes completely, or it underflushes, if it flushes at all, it is flawed. And there's nothing to brag about because you've learned to operate it. It's good that you can, but you can't sit up and act like you're you can't act like you're something special because you figured out how to do that. Because let's be honest, if I go somewhere else and I forget that other toilets are normal, I'm going to operate them the wrong way. I'm going to pull the top off the back and hit those buttons on the inside when I don't have to. You understand? You see what I'm getting at now? So you can compare the ones in the West to that toilet. I hate to say it. And I'm not talking about every single Western woman, but the wicked witches of the West who do make up either the loud minority or the loud majority, however many there are, they do make up they make up the impression, because whether they're plenty or few, they're hyper available and we all got to run across them, and they set the tone. And they got us thinking that the abnormal, dysfunctioning toilets that they are normal. That you should have to do this when in fact you shouldn't. And then when you do, guess what? Because unlike toilets, they have their own free will, they still decide they're just not going to function later. And some are going to write in my comments section and say, well, Black, you sound bitter. What if they just didn't work out? It took 20 years to figure that out? And I'll bet you she's the one that filed. And the funny thing is, for all of this alpha image, this swag OG image that Dr. Dre put on for years, let's just call it what the F it is. Number one, Ice Cube showed that he never really was a gangbanger. That's the first thing. He's been an aspiring entertainer since before he got famous. And yeah, he dressed in drag. That was real. And I don't understand how the hell it was that the majority of black folks in my hometown continued to listen to him after Cube exposed that. In all honesty, some people say he put Snoop on. I think Snoop kept him on, to be honest. But anyway, that being said, look at that image that he put up. And all this time he's been married to a woman who, although she's quite light bright and quite high yellow, if she in fact is African American at all, she's not black enough, as people understand stereotypically black to be even in his old rap videos, his old gangster rap videos. She couldn't even make it there. For all this talk about how rap video vixens are always pale and high yellow, she couldn't even pass in one of those videos if she wanted to. And yet and still, We as a community have elevated him, and that has been our fault as a people, as a population. And so now, right now, we got to understand this is another nail in the coffin again for anybody that wants to talk about so-called alphaness and to say that we guys who want to leave this whole paradigm are just not alpha enough. No, you niggas just don't understand there's no such thing as alpha enough. You are trying to be what doesn't exist. You are trying to be Superman, which is a fictitious character, in exchange to get a regular run-of-the-mill, you already know who I'm going to say, Lois Lane. And again, the game has already been run on you. You got gamed. You're not the one with game, because you're willing to do and try to be this which does not exist in exchange for her. Never stopping to think, if I got to do all of this, then you better be Wonder Woman. At least. You never put this together. You were still talking about what we have to do to get them, especially if they're 8s, 9s, and 10s in terms of looks, instead of understanding that, in fact, the whole paradigm is busted, it's broken. The environment is a restroom in which the toilet is broken. If you don't want to compare them to toilets, fine. Vending machines, whatever the case is, they are broken. And the ones that aren't get silenced by the ones who are, as I said in my last one. The commonality between corrupt cops and the sapphire gynocrats. They will kill and assassinate any of their own that are honest enough to come and blow the whistle. That's what we're dealing with. Don't say anything again about how alpha you are, and don't say anything again about how alpha SYSBM guys are not, or Passport Brothers are not, or IBMOR are not. Don't say a damn thing to Edward Anderson or about Edward Anderson again, about how unmanly you think he is, or about how unalpha he is. Yeah, his voice may be high, but you know what? A lot of you niggas know somebody that's your boy that has a voice similar. And some of y'all know someone that y'all say, yeah, he cool. He talk like a little white boy, but he cool. You know someone like that. You give them a pass. But because someone like him comes out and calls the game exactly what the hell it is, then you want to point out these same things. No, bruh. No. Because if Brother Anderson that y'all love to go in on, as the example of which I know, and I know there are others who I don't know, but y'all like to go in on them too. If Brother Anderson, the example on whom y'all love to go in, were to become Dr. Dre tomorrow, it would not be enough to keep Nicole young. And it's not his fault. It's just time for you niggas to admit that that's how it's rigged. It's time for you to just be honest with yourselves. Game can't work necessarily for you right now, because we men have gone too many millennia letting them be the ones with all the game. And now that we're wising up, we're realizing what it actually is. And one of the ways you can tell is by how angry women get at the idea of our awareness spreading even to guys like you. Now, they might look at someone like me and say, well, I mean, you know, I'm into brothers. I ain't into this non-recognizably black look. I'm into this height. I'm not into these short guys. They might look at some of guys that I've met or seen before, and they might say this. But if you think you are alpha, and they treat you temporarily like you're so-called alpha, and you start to understand what you're worth, or what you could be worth if you get your mind right, and see how that bothers the hell out of them, oh my goodness, that should prove to you. I think I've said enough. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-alpha male power just because they don't like it. Nigga.